This webcast is a demonstration of how to use the HUD utility schedule model to calculate utility allowances for home-assisted rental projects. It will cover the home regulatory requirements for calculating a utility allowance, the steps involved in using the HUD utility schedule model, a demonstration of actual utility costs being entered into the model, and a list of HUD resources available to participating jurisdictions. According to the home regulation at 24 CFR 92.252D1, a PJ must establish maximum monthly allowances for utilities and services and update the allowances annually. This applies to home-assisted rental projects where tenants pay utilities directly. A PJ must use the HUD utility schedule model or otherwise determine the utility allowance for the project based on the types of utilities used at the project. HOMEfires Volume 13, Number 2 was published in May 2016. It makes clear that under the home rule, PJs are no longer permitted to use the utility allowance established by the local public housing authority for home-assisted rental projects. HUD made this change because the methods used by PHAs to establish these utility schedules vary across the country, and therefore may generate inconsistent or inaccurate allowances. This applies for projects to which home funds were committed on or after August 23, 2013. Projects to which home funds were committed before the effective date of the rule may continue to use the PHA utility schedule. The option in the regulation to otherwise determine the utility allowance for the project based on the types of utilities used at the project means that if a PJ chooses not to use the HUD utility schedule model, the utility allowance must be established using a project-specific methodology. This presentation focuses on the HUD utility schedule model. It does not review the other acceptable methods for calculating a home utility allowance. How the HUD utility model schedule works. The HUD utility schedule model is based on the Department of Energy's Residential Energy Consumption Survey, RECS. RECS provides the only available national data on actual home energy consumption. The model provides consumption estimates tailored to local weather conditions. The PJ will supply local utility prices, also known as tariffs, and the model then produces utility schedules in the HUD 52667 format and can produce utility allowances when tenant-paid utilities and unit size are identified. There are two versions of the model: an Excel template and a web-based model. The order of information is slightly different, but in both cases, the basic steps in using the model are to select a location, enter building and unit characteristics, enter tariffs and utility taxes or fees for each type of utility, review utility schedule for reasonableness, and then review the utility allowance for a particular unit size. The majority of the effort in using the model is in entering the utility rates. A PJ should use their best judgment in determining the local utility rates and taxes. If there are a number of utility providers in the area, a PJ should ensure that the rates for the correct utility provider were entered into the model before using an allowance for a particular home project. If the same utility provider and rate schedules apply to multiple home projects within the same jurisdiction, the PJ can use the same schedule as long as the projects have the same characteristics, including size, type, and energy efficiency. The utility tariffs that can be entered into the model are electricity, natural gas, fuel, liquefied petroleum gas, water, and sewer. Other fees listed towards the bottom of the model, such as trash and appliance fees, are not applicable to home because they are not part of the definition of utility for the purposes of the home utility allowance. Most utility companies allow you to download a utility tariff or rate book from their website. However, oil price quotes and LPG, also known as propane prices, may need to be obtained directly from the local company by telephone. If possible, it's useful to obtain a utility bill for the project or for a similar project to confirm that the correct rate schedule is being used and which taxes or fees are charged. Some utilities describe taxes in the rate book and some do not, so the example bill will clarify. A PJ should pay careful attention to the units of measurement. If necessary, a PJ can use a conversion table found online to convert units found in the ratebook to what is used in the model. The PJ should also pay attention to whether the utility bill is in dollars or cents, as the model always uses dollars. In addition, if the utility is deregulated and multiple companies are involved in providing the service, the PJ will need to add the charges for each and enter a combined total into the model. Or if the utility company has multiple rate blocks, which is a stepped or tiered rate, then the charges will need to be combined for each rate block. The demonstration will illustrate this point. Moving on to the demonstration, let's take a look at the model, starting with the location section. Begin typing the zip code in the Search for PHA or ZIP field, and a list of zip codes will appear. Your selection will populate the selected PHA or ZIP field. The Form Date field will be automatically populated with the day's date. The Show Details button brings up a table of climate data. HDD is a heating degree day, which is a measurement designed to reflect the demand for energy needed to heat a building related to the measurement of outside air temperature. CDD is a cooling degree day, which reflects the amount of energy used to cool a home or business. A PJ does not need to enter anything related to the climate data. The model will use the correct data based on the chosen location. The next section is unit information, which includes both building characteristics and unit type. The unit type is a drop-down of building type, single-family or multifamily, and size. The number of bedrooms drop-down allows the user to select the unit size, utility allowance, that the model will calculate. The electric tariff is either standard or special. A special electric tariff is only selected when the utility company has a special discounted rate for customers that heat with electricity and only use electricity and no other source of energy in their homes. So standard electric tariff will be selected in most cases. AC allowance is usually included depending on the location and climate. And then energy savings design is only applicable if the project meets an energy efficiency standard. Moving on, the actual allowance section is relevant to the determination of a utility allowance. If selections here are left blank, the model will still produce a utility schedule, but not an allowance for the unit type selected above. In this case, that's the 2-bedroom unit. A PJ can choose the applicable utility from the drop-down for each category. The remainder of the model is for the PJ to enter utility rates. Each tariff section has a similar structure. The first type of utility listed is the standard electric utility tariff. The model has columns for current and previous utility rates. Only the entries under the current rate are modeled, so PJ can leave the fields under previous blank. The purpose of entering the previous rates would be to view the change in utility prices. As you can see, the user should start by entering the name of the utility company, the name of the rate schedule, and the effective date of those rates for documentation purposes. If applicable, different utility rates can be entered for summer and winter months. If the rates are not seasonal, a PJ should enter January for the first month of summer and December for the first month of winter. In this case, utility rates should only be entered in the summer blocks. If the tariff is seasonal but starts mid-month, make sure that the number of summer months in the rate schedule and the number of summer months in the model are equivalent. The number of months is more important than the start month. The other fields in this section are the monthly charge, which may be called a service charge or a minimum customer charge, the rate blocks for summer and winter, and the cost of the rate blocks for summer and winter, and the extra charges or fees and taxes. The difference between a monthly charge and a tax or fee is that the monthly charge is a flat fee, whereas the taxes and fees are entered either as a per unit of usage or as a percentage. Here is an excerpt of the residential electricity rates for Arlington, Virginia. The electric rates are different for summer and winter months. The billing month shows that June is the beginning of the summer billing cycle, and October is the beginning of the winter billing cycle. The rates are billed as cents per kilowatt hour, so the rates will need to be converted to dollars per kilowatt hour before being entered into the model. In addition, the rate schedule shows separate charges for electricity distribution, generation, and transmission. Because these charges are not input separately into the model, they will need to be combined. In order to calculate the electric rates for the model, I have entered the rates on an Excel spreadsheet. Here I have already converted the rates to dollars. It's a best practice for PJs to document each source and each decision about how to calculate the rates. This provides a basis for evaluating the results and will help when the PJ recalculates the schedule each year. The monthly charge, called a basic customer charge, is $7 and can be entered into the model. First, we should record the first and last month of summer, June, and September, because October was the first month of the winter billing cycle. And then we can record the $7 monthly charge. Next, both distribution and generation have separate rates for the first 800 kilowatt hours of usage and over 800 kilowatt hours. This is known as a stepped rate, or in the model, it is called rate blocks. We need to input two rate blocks, 0 to 800 kilowatt hours and over 800 kilowatt hours for both summer and winter. After typing 800 into the first block, the word remainder will appear in the next rate block, which will represent over 800 kilowatt hours. This needs to be repeated for winter as well. Now we need to determine the cost of each block for both summer and winter. For the first rate block, we need to add the rate for the first 800 kilowatt hours for distribution and generation, and the rate for transmission, which applies to all kilowatt hours. The total cost for the first blocks for both summer and winter will then be entered into the model. For the second block rate, we need to add the rate in excess of 800 kilowatt hours for distribution and generation, as well as the charge for transmission, which applies to all kilowatt hours of usage. The total cost for the second blocks for both summer and winter should then be entered into the model. In this example for Arlington, Virginia, the taxes are not listed on the electric tariff. They may be found on a utility bill, but I was able to find the local utility tax and the state consumption tax rates from a quick search online of the Arlington County Code and the State of Virginia Code. Again, I entered the information in my spreadsheet. In this example, the taxes are not charged in the same format accepted by the model. County utility tax is only charged when a resident uses over 400 kilowatt hours, but is never higher than $3. State consumption tax is a stepped rate with different rate blocks than what we input into the model. In this case, we have to make a decision about the most appropriate way to enter taxes into the model. It is reasonable to enter the maximum $3 tax for the local utility tax because residents are likely to owe nearly that much based on usage. We'll add the $3 tax to the monthly charge because it's a flat rate. For the state tax, it is unlikely that a customer would use in excess of 2,500 kilowatt hours of usage. So it's reasonable to enter only the cost of the first tax block. This tax rate will be entered in the extra charges field on the model because it is charged per kilowatt hour, whereas the taxes field is charged as a percentage. After completing the electric utility entry, we can move on to natural gas and start by entering the company and rate names. In the example for Arlington, Virginia, the natural gas utility rates are fairly straightforward and not charged seasonally. However, the rates are in cents and therefore will need to be converted to dollars. Once again, I have transferred the rates to an Excel spreadsheet and converted the rates from cents to dollars per therm. I will enter the monthly charge, called a system charge, of $11.25, and then the 3 blocks and corresponding costs for each block. in the summer section only because the rates are not seasonal. Just like with the electric taxes, the natural gas taxes are not available on the tariff. Again, I found them through a quick internet search. County tax is only charged when a resident uses over 20 CCFs, but is never higher than $3. Consumption tax is a stepped rate with different rate blocks than the cost of natural gas. Because the state tax is charged in CCFs, but the natural gas rate is charged in therms, the tax rate will need to be converted. Looking back at my spreadsheet, I've entered the tax rates and calculated the rate per therm using a conversion table from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, found online, and summed the 3 consumption tax rates. Again, I need to decide the most reasonable way to record the taxes. I will add the maximum county utility tax of $3 to the monthly charge field because it is a flat fee, and I will add the consumption tax rate per therm that I calculated into the extra charges field. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead to water and sewer rather than repeating this process for fuel oil, delivery, and propane. The HUD utility schedule model provides separate sections for water and sewer, although in some jurisdictions there's only one rate for both water and sewer. In that case, a PJ should enter the rate just once in the water section. These 2 sections allow a PJ to enter rates either in dollars per cubic feet or in dollars per gallons. So a PJ should pay attention to the units of measurement. The other difference between water and sewer and the previous examples is that the model does not allow for seasonal rates. For Arlington, Virginia, water and sewer rates are charged separately in dollars per 1,000 gallons, so the rates will need to be converted to dollars per gallon. There's not a monthly charge to enter, and the rate does not change based on usage, so we don't have to determine the rate blocks. There's also not separate taxes and fees to be entered. Therefore, I will enter one rate for water and one rate for sewer. As a reminder, the fees section at the bottom of the model are not applicable to the home utility allowance. Having finished entering the applicable utility rates, a PJ would scroll to the top of the model and click the Projected Family Allowances button to see the model results. If a PJ selects the Preview Allowance Schedule button instead, the full schedule will appear, but it will not include the allowance calculated for the number of bedrooms selected in the Unit Information section. In this case, that's the 2-bedroom unit. A PJ should review both the schedule and the allowance for reasonableness to ensure that errors did not occur when rates were being entered. The Show HUD State Average button at the top of the screen provides averages in the schedule for comparison. To calculate different allowances for a different size unit, a PJ can return to the model, change the number of bedrooms, and create a new utility allowance by clicking on the Projected Family Allowance button again. The schedule will not change, but a new allowance will be calculated for the bedroom size chosen. This is the end of the model demonstration. Here's a list of resources with more information about the home utility allowance requirements and the HUD utility schedule model. In particular, there are instructions for how to use the HUD utility schedule model on the HUD user webpage. If PJs have questions about home requirements, they should contact their CPD representative in the HUD field office. Thank you for viewing the HUD utility schedule model webcast.